Greetings, fellow travelers, vagrants, explorers, wildlanders, and welcome to episode 73 of the Retro Wildlands. My name is Nomad, and this is my gaming podcast where I like to share my thoughts and experiences with a video game that I've discovered or rediscovered while roaming the gaming wildlands. Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. It's always a pleasure to have your company as we set off into the gaming wilderness for another adventure. Dee Dee, our canine expedition leader, has already stoked the fire and drawn a map of the surrounding area. Dee Dee made it a point to keep this particular map as easy to read and navigate as possible. We have our landmarks and very obvious arrows to point out which ways we can go, so there's no wondering which way we need to head. Really appreciate all the work that you put into this, boy. Now come here. Who's the little good boy? Who's the little good bear? Oh yeah, you're such good boy. You're such best boy. Yes, you are. Meanwhile, Dexter, our canine head of security, is at the edge of camp, sword in one paw and shield in the other, making sure that we're safe. I have no idea how he can walk with 2 out of 4 paws currently holding things, but I'll leave that to your imagination. One thing he doesn't have to worry about, though, is random encounters. Don't you just hate those? You're wandering around the wilderness and all of a sudden, bam, out of nowhere, you're face to face with some goblins who want to stab you and take all your stuff. Yeah, I'm not much of a fan of those either. Dee Dee's simple map and Dexter's ability to see threats out and about our campsite bring to mind an adventure that we had recently. It was a rather light quest, all things considered, but it was a charming one. But just like in other adventures we've partaken in, the fate of the world rested on our ability to defeat an evil force and recover several crystals of legend. On today's episode, we're checking out a video game that was more or less designed to be a beginner's RPG. While the overall experience is best described as simple, the heart of what makes an adventure is present and accounted for. The simplicity of the experience, however, is what I feel most people remember. And for better or worse, that simplicity makes it stand apart from the mainline series that it's a part of. Back in the early 90s, the role-playing genre wasn't really a major seller in North America. As a way to try and gain more appeal for the genre, developer Square developed this game in order to fold more fans into RPGs. Several games had already been launched in North America, but executives from Square felt like the high difficulty of those games were a big turnoff. So, as a way to ease newcomers in, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was born. Mystic Quest did not receive great reception when it originally launched, and things didn't really improve over time. I've heard some gamers call Mystic Quest the worst Final Fantasy. Others have called it a franchise embarrassment, a game that tried to appeal to too many and ultimately appealed to no one. It was insubstantial, it held your hand too much, though the music was absolute fire. But as time passed, I have heard some praise Mystic Quest for the very simplicity that held it back originally. In the age where 150-hour games exist with genre mechanics requiring you to go back to school and get a degree to understand, is there now a place for a game that keeps things simple? Well, my friends, after playing through a few games where simplicity was the one thing I liked the most, I feel like I had to give this one a try and see if arguably the worst Final Fantasy might actually be something worth spending some time with. And after seeing Mystic Quest to its conclusion, I have thoughts. I am eager to dive into this one with you all, so grab a seat by the campfire and settle in. Now, if you're new to the show, I like to kick things off first by chatting it up with you all a little bit by the campfire here and give everyone a peek behind the scenes in the Retro Wildlands. Depending on what's on my mind, I like to share what's going on with the show itself, talk about what games I'm playing or might have completed since we talked last, what projects I might be working on, what's going on in my personal life, or whatever I feel like spewing into this here microphone. I'll also take some time to read and respond to any comments I received about Final Fantasy Mystic Quest from our Retro Wildlands social media pages in an effort to give the community a moment to sound off their thoughts. Now, if none of that interests you and you are just here for the Mystic Quest experience, no worries, you can skip ahead in the podcast about 20-ish minutes or so and you should get into the game talk. I'll also make it a point to put timestamps in the show notes so you can see exactly where you need to go if you don't want to stay by the fire and you want to head straight off into adventure. But, as always, my friends, you should absolutely stick around, and I encourage you to do so. We're going to talk a bit of video games, and your fellow Wildlanders will get a chance to sound off their thoughts to the rest of us. And I cannot think of a better way to get our expedition ready to scour the land in search of the 4 crystals of legend. So, without further ado, let's get into our opening segment that I like to call Campfire Catchup. So I'm not sure when it officially starts, but in my house, we are head first into spooky season. Halloween is fast approaching, and it's by far my favorite time of year. Everything about this time is just perfect. The weather, for one thing, is usually pretty good around this time here in Ohio. Temperatures are coming down, and they can lead to some great mornings around here. I've been trying to take Dee Dee on more frequent walks, and the best time for those is in the morning. The cool air has really made our walks that much more enjoyable, and sometimes we walk for a couple miles before heading back home, and it's been really great. Justine and I have been busy getting the house decorated for Halloween too. Well, to be fair, it's mostly her. She always comes up with some grand idea, and I usually just stand back and wait to be told what to do. This year, Justine wanted to try her hand at turning our front yard into a medieval theme, complete with stone walls, dragons, and other fantasy creatures. It all stemmed from this 8-foot-tall dragon statue that she saw one year when we were out and about. We were lucky enough to get our hands on one of our very own this year, and we're building the front yard out to accommodate it. The dragon itself is really cool. It's the kind that lights up, roars when somebody trips a proximity sensor, and then head and neck move while it's roaring. It's the first year we ever got anything like this, so it's been cool building out her vision. We've even taken to gathering up old pallets, wrapping them in a stone-patterned tablecloth that she found online, and then we used those to build out our castle walls. Sprinkle in a couple plastic skeletons dressed up in old medieval-looking clothes, and we have ourselves a genuine scene out front. I'll have to share a photo online when it's all said and done, but with Justine's vision nearly complete, it is truly time to celebrate around here. God damn, I love spooky season. A shout out to you, Justine. Baby, when you get an idea and you let passion fuel that idea, it is amazing to see what sort of things you can come up with. And while I love all sorts of spooky things like scary movies and video games and things like that, you are what makes this year so enjoyable to me. So staying on the theme of spooky season, like I mentioned, I especially love this time of year because of all the spooky movies out there and spooky video games to play. My stepdaughter Cameron, who's going into high school this year, has really taken a liking to scary movies and even some scary video games. It's nice because Justine cannot do scary or suspenseful stuff, but Cameron absolutely loves all that. With Halloween approaching, Cameron and I are trying to decide what movies to watch and what games to play together. Like most everyone else, I do plan to play a spooky game for the podcast or highlight a bunch of spooky games, though at the time of writing the script, I am torn on what exactly I want to do or highlight. Don't worry though, I will have made up my mind by the end of the episode, so certainly stick around. Beyond Halloween's impending arrival, things around here have been business as usual for the most part. Ever since I launched the new website for the podcast, www.theretrowildlands.com, I've really taken a liking to posting mini reviews on games I've played this year that I don't plan to make episodes of the podcast out of. That's mostly because those games are more modern, but it's been fun putting together short articles and sharing my thoughts on a game that I've played this year in a different way. While it's been hard for me over the last year or so to keep a consistent podcast release schedule, I've been really good about adding a new mini review to the website about once a week or so. It's hard to know if anyone's interested in them since I don't have website traffic analytics available to me at the price I'm paying for the hosting site that I use, but I've been enjoying putting them together nonetheless. If you're at all interested, you should definitely check out the website and head on over to the page I titled Expedition Logs and check them out. There's about 7 reviews up there right now at the time of this recording, and I've made it a point to make them no longer than 5-minute reads, so they're pretty digestible. Long term, I'd like to write about some different topics or tackle a random thought or two. Even longer term, maybe turning those reviews or topical discussions into an audio recording and releasing them on the main podcast feed, like I've done with a handful of the video reviews that I've done on the Retro Wildlands YouTube page. I'm not really sure what makes the most sense right now, but it's been fun supplementing podcast episodes with these mini reviews. More than anything, I really love building up what the Retro Wildlands is and the content therein, so if you're interested in checking out any of the stuff that I put together, definitely head on over to our website, theretrowildlands.com. Oh, and be sure to check out SuperPodNetwork.com. Since the Retro Wildlands is part of the SuperPod Network of gaming podcasts, I do on occasion write some topical blogs for that platform, so be sure to check those out too. It should be posting relatively soon if it hasn't already, but I wrote an article on one of my favorite spooky games, Haunting Ground, which came out on the PlayStation 2. I did cover that game on episode 15 of this podcast, but it was fun diving into what made that game scary in a blog post, so keep your eyes out for that. Other than all that, the only major thing that I have coming up is the Cleveland Gaming Classic, the annual gaming convention that comes around to Cleveland, Ohio. If you happen to be a long-time listener of the show, this will be the third time that I've mentioned going to the show, and it's become one of my favorite annual events. I don't know how quick this episode is going to air, but as I write this script, I haven't gone yet, but more than likely, while I'm editing the show, I will have gone, so I'm sure I will be sharing all of that experience over on our social media pages. When I first started going to conventions, I was more so into finding a great deal and adding some unique gems to my gaming collection. Nowadays, though, I am much more excited to see some of the people that I've grown to know over the last few years. Fellow content creators, podcasters, and just some good, solid people that I've had the pleasure of interacting with. CGC seems like a yearly reunion now more than anything else, and I'm very excited. I was hoping to do more conventions this year, but things just didn't work out the way I wanted. Next year, though, I am hoping things will be different. Either way, the Cleveland Gaming Classic is coming or has come and gone, so hopefully I will see some of you there or have seen some of you there already. Yeah. So other than keeping busy with stuff for the show, at my day job and here at home with the family, I continue to squeeze in gaming whenever I can. I made a personal goal to try and play and complete at least 50 games this year, and as of this recording, I've completed 38, which is pretty damn good, I'd say. 6 of those games were replays of games that I've completed before, so it's mostly been new stuff this year. It is worth noting that I've made it a point to prioritize things that I've wanted to play that aren't all that long, and that's helped me knock some low-hanging fruit off the backlog. I also want to point out I am doing my absolute best to not rush through these games. Games are meant to be played, digested, and thoroughly enjoyed, so even with taking my time, I'm pretty impressed with what I've gotten through so far. As I continue to add to that pile, I do want to call out that I recently got my hands on a physical copy of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, a new game that dropped this year from developer The Game Kitchen and publisher Dotemu. Or is it Dotemu? Whatever, go look them up, they're amazing. These guys are the ones, if you remember, helped publish some amazing gems over the last couple years, such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge a few years ago, Metal Slug Tactics last year, and they are currently involved with Marvel Cosmic Invasion, which is slated to come out here in the near future. I took on the original Ninja Gaiden on the Nintendo a couple years back and covered it on episode 48 of the show, and since then, I've been fairly interested in this series as a whole. The original Ninja Gaiden was a brutal experience, requiring you as the player to put your reps in order to, quote-unquote, get good. But I always appreciated the unique storytelling in the game, and the gameplay, while hard and frustrating at times, I am looking at you, you goddamn birds, I had a genuine good time with the game as a whole. Ragebound was made in such a way that keeps that original spirit in mind while adding some neat gameplay features to the mix, and it's quickly sinking its hooks in me. I haven't played the game enough to really give it an honest review at this point or anything, but I can promise, once I do get to that point, I want to drop a short written review on our website at the very least, so definitely keep an eye out for that. One game I did complete since we talked last is one that I've been meaning to play since 2013, and that's a little game called The Stanley Parable. Since completing Firewatch and What Remains of Edith Finch, I've been in this walking simulator sort of mood, so just made sense to finally give this one a go. I remember when the Stanley Parable first came out, and my buddy Brian had me try the game with absolutely no context. As I was walking the office halls as Stanley, I knew right away this was a special game. The Stanley Parable is less of a traditional video game and more of an interactive story about choice, control, and how it is that we play games. You as the player step into the shoes of Stanley, an office worker who realizes one day that all of his coworkers have mysteriously vanished. Guided, or maybe manipulated, by a witty, omnipresent narrator, you explore the empty office and make choices about where to go and what to do. The great thing about this game is that it constantly toys with your expectations. You can follow the narrator's instructions to the letter and allow him to guide you from one room to the next, or you can completely ignore him and wander off the path. Either way, the game reacts to you, branching into dozens of different, often hilarious, or even some thought-provoking endings. It's clever, surreal, and endlessly self-aware. It's a game that makes you question whether you're really making your own decisions or just doing what the game wants you to do. I'm sure there has to be articles and videos out there dissecting this game in 100 different ways in order to fully understand the overarching themes and the developer's intentions. But I had fun spending my time with this game and thinking about what it was that I was truly doing in the game world. All the while, kind of coming up with my own interpretations based on the things that I did or sometimes didn't do. Even getting all the trophies on the PlayStation was fun, as the game made you do some pretty interesting things. One trophy required me to play the game for the entirety of a Tuesday, which, to be clear, I did not do, though I did leave my PlayStation 5 on for 24 straight hours with the game running, so I did get that trophy. If you're the type of gamer who wants non-stop action and a clear, quote-unquote win condition for your video games, the Stanley Parable is not the game for you. But if you're the type of gamer who's into an interesting narrative adventure and thrives on experimentation and just open-endedness, I think you'll love the Stanley Parable. Beyond completing the Stanley Parable, the only other game that I'm still working through at the time of this recording is Final Fantasy Tactics on the PlayStation Portable. I mentioned last episode, if you were around, that I've been replaying the game ahead of its remaster dropping because I may be joining another podcast to talk about the game and its sprawling narrative. At this point, I am fairly confident in saying that that is absolutely going to happen, as I have already recorded one episode in a multi-part series on the game. Depending on how quick I can get this show edited and uploaded, my guest appearance may already be out in the wild, so be sure to check out our social media pages for that information. I did create a page on the Retro Wildlands website with a bunch of my guest appearances, and I'll make sure to add this one there when the time comes. I am very excited for the remake of Final Fantasy Tactics, and I already have it pre-ordered. When am I going to have time to play through it, though? Don't know, but we'll make it work. Somehow, anyway. Alright, and with that, I think that's all I've got for our catch-up today, my friends. It is about time we transition into the reason that you are all here today. It is time to talk about Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the Super Nintendo. A little while ago, I put a call out for anyone who wanted to share their thoughts or share a memory about Mystic Quest over on our social media pages. A few of you did just that, so let's check out what some of you had to say. First up, we have George, who chimed in over on our Retro Wildlands Facebook page. George said, "I remember playing the game randomly as a kid. It was also the very first game I remember ever calling the Nintendo tip hotline for. But it wasn't until 10 or so years later that I rediscovered the OST, the original soundtrack. Then, about 15 years after that, I found out it was on vinyl, and I've gone a bit mad for it. The OST definitely holds a special place in my heart." I can get behind this game's soundtrack, George, 100%, and especially how a good soundtrack just sticks with you like that. I remember saving up my money when I was younger to get my hands on the CD soundtracks for Final Fantasy VII and VIII. But regarding the Mystic Quest soundtrack, I was very, very impressed with it. Generally, the Final Fantasy series has memorable music. From the early years of Uematsu to the later years where the likes of Sakimoto, Awada, and Shimamura took the helm, there's always been great musical backing to the series. When I originally went into Mystic Quest, I really wasn't expecting much, and I don't know if I really knew why that was. Mystic Quest soundtrack was a collaborative effort between Ryuji Sasai and Yasuhiro Kawakami, and all things considered, they did one hell of a job. I don't think there was a single tune in this game that I didn't like when I think back on it all. I can absolutely see someone elevating this one up, even going so far as to getting their hands on it physically like you did. But of all the tunes that really stuck out for me in this game, our next comment highlights my personal favorite. Uriah dropped a comment over on our Facebook page as well and said, "Amazing OST, that battle theme." You nailed it, Uriah, that battle theme. The battle theme in any RPG owes it to the player to be upbeat, catchy, and memorable, and the battle theme here in Mystic Quest does all of that. Unlike many early Final Fantasy battle themes that leaned heavily on classical or symphonic styles, Mystic Quest battle theme sounds almost like a rock track. The guitar-like riffs, punchy bass line, and fast pace really lend themselves to a battle scenario, and it really found a way to hook me. Which is also good because you're going to be doing a lot of battling in Mystic Quest. After multiple hours of that, the music never got old, and that's a true testament to how awesome that soundtrack really is. I would go so far as to say that this battle theme is sitting comfortably in my top 10 battle themes of all time. Moving along, Curtis over on our Facebook page shared their love of Mystic Quest in a comment. Curtis was one of the people who had suggested to me that I give Mystic Quest a whirl, so thank you for that, my friend. Curtis, though, had this to share today. After falling in love with Final Fantasy IV, I absolutely had to play Mystic Quest. I picked it up at a used game store, paying only $5, took it home, popped it into my SNES, and was very confused. It was such a different game, but it had a charm all its own. Using an axe to chop down trees blocking the way, bombing rocks and other obstructions, and, my favorite, using the claw to pull myself across gaps. I really loved the claws, even if they were technically the weakest weapon. And, of course, I still think back to what was basically a cheat to beat the final boss. I beat him properly at first, but I did go back and hit him with Cure, only from the MC, to absolutely destroy him on a subsequent playthrough. Very, very cool story, my friend. I felt the same way when I first played Mystic Quest. It was definitely a very different experience from the mainline Final Fantasy games, but once I leaned into what it was trying to be, I found a lot to enjoy. I also loved how the weapons had real utility outside of battle, like chopping down trees like you mentioned, or bombing rocks. The claw especially stuck with me too. It was very satisfying to use it to cross gaps or scale walls, even if it wasn't the strongest in combat, like you said. And that final boss trick with Cure, mwah, absolute classic. Stuff like that really added to the game's charm, although I had no idea using Cure on the final boss would do that much damage to it initially. Without spoiling the whole episode, I will say that Mystic Quest might not be everyone's favorite Final Fantasy, but it carved out its own little space in the series for me, and sounds like it did that for you too. Our last comment came from Chris over on Facebook as well, and while Chris shared some other comments about Mystic Quest and some other posts that I made about the game, I decided to share this one because it made me chuckle. Chris said, "Is that cover art intentionally pulling Lion King vibes?" If you're listening and haven't seen the box art for Mystic Quest, or you can't recall it offhand, jump online and check it out. Our hero Benjamin absolutely looks like he's on the edge of Pride Rock, and the sword he's holding up may as well be baby Simba. I had it in my head that maybe Mystic Quest took some unintentional inspiration from the Lion King film, But Chris pointed out that it may be the other way around, since Mystic Quest released in North America in 1992 and The Lion King released in 1994. It does make you think a little bit, doesn't it? Thank you, Chris, for pointing this out. It's absolutely something that I will never be able to unsee. A huge thank you to George, Uriah, Curtis, and Chris for sharing their thoughts and memories on Final Fantasy Mystic Quest with us today. If you ever wanted to share your thoughts on a game or topic that I cover on the podcast, consider following us on your favorite social media platform. When I'm working on the script for the next show, I'll put a call out for comments, so that's your chance to sound off. I love reading these comments and allowing you all a moment to share what makes these games special to you, so definitely follow us on social media for your chance to do just that. Originally released in October in the year 1992, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest wasn't your typical Final Fantasy adventure. This spin-off was designed to be an entry-level RPG, something simple, approachable, and easy to follow for players who may have been new to the genre at the time. The story follows a young hero tasked with restoring balance to the world by reclaiming stolen elemental crystals, a familiar theme for the series, but told through a much more streamlined experience. With its stripped-down mechanics, smaller world, and straightforward battles, Mystic Quest stood apart from its more complex siblings in the Final Fantasy lineup. But with that accessibility came a fair share of criticism. Some saw Mystic Quest as a watered-down RPG that underestimated its audience, while others found its simplicity charming and even nostalgic. Was it a bold attempt to bring role-playing games to a wider audience, or a misstep in a franchise known for depth and ambition? Well, the only way we're going to find the answer to that question is to slot the game into our Super Nintendo and find out. So let's gear up, Wildlanders. Grab your sword, pocket a few cure potions, and prepare for adventure. It's time we embark on our Mystic Quest and see where this unique title truly stands in the long legacy of Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy, I argue, is pretty much a household name at this point. Well, maybe not as much of a household name as Super Mario, but I'd like to think most people have at least heard of Final Fantasy as a series. Hironobu Sakaguchi, the Gooch himself, created the series, and the first game in that series was released back in 1987 when I was 3 years old. Currently, the series has 16 mainline entries, but there are dozens and dozens of spin-offs, along with some other random titles with the Final Fantasy name attached. We're talking mobile gacha games like Brave Exvius, tactical RPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics, and even fighting games like Dissidia Final Fantasy. Regardless of how many there are, though, Final Fantasy will forever be known as a role-playing game franchise at its core. Although the series was born in '87, it would take some time for it to really catch on outside of Japan, specifically in the West. RPGs, though, were somewhat popular in America specifically. In the early to mid-1980s, computer role-playing games, or CRPGs as I've heard them called, started to gain a little bit of a following. Games like Ultima and Wizardry gained a bit of following, as well as The Bard's Tale. Another game called Pool of Radiance was released in 1988, and that was the first real successful video game adaptation of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rule set. Console RPGs took their time breaking into the West. Dragon Quest and the original Final Fantasy came to the West in the late 80s, and while each were, and arguably still are, great games, American gamers apparently didn't find them to be all that exciting. Unique, yes. Games that gamers really wanted to play at the time? Not quite. It wasn't until the release of Final Fantasy VII in 1997 that the West really started to gravitate towards JRPGs. For me personally, Final Fantasy VII changed my own perspective on the genre as well. The hype around the game was incredible to the point where my stepdad got pulled into that hype and he rented the game so he could see what it was all about. He absolutely hated it and didn't care for turn-based combat as a mechanic, but that's another story for another day. From then on, RPGs and their popularity would grow into what it is today. But before that happened, there were several attempts to get the genre to be accepted in the West. One such game that was developed by Square was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. This game was specifically made with the US market in mind. Before this, Square had released several Final Fantasy spin-off titles in North America. Final Fantasy Legend on the Game Boy was the first installment of the Saga series, just with the FF name attached. Final Fantasy Adventure also came out on the Game Boy and was actually the first game in the Mana series of titles. The thought, I assume, was to try to bring over some of the RPGs Japan customers really liked to the West under the Final Fantasy banner, one that's more recognizable and hopefully more approachable. That didn't go over all that well, and sales in the West weren't nearly as high as they were in Japan for these titles. But really the question was, why was that? Why was the West seemingly resisting the RPG, the genre that promises grand adventures and epic moments? Well, according to some bean counters and executives at Square, it seemed like those games were just a little too difficult. Yes, that is correct. Us Americans did not like a challenge and seemingly shied away from more advanced video games. I personally don't know how true that would have been, though. I feel like a lot of games on the original Nintendo were very hard, and they all sold fairly decently, or at least I thought, but nevertheless, Square executives felt like they had found the best way to not only get Mystic Quest to break into the West, but spark that RPG fire. In order to do all of that, Mystic Quest was going to be an easier experience. So much so that developers wanted to make sure it was accessible to children. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest has a pretty unique legacy among gamers today. It's often remembered as the quote-unquote odd man out in the Final Fantasy series, and a lot of it had to do with the end product due to all of these difficulty concessions that the developers had to make. Or rather, chose to make, I guess. When the game was finished, it sported a stripped-down experience where many of the complex mechanics that defined Final Fantasy and more involved RPGs in general were simplified. At the time, critical reception was a bit of a mixed bag. Some gamers really enjoyed the game, calling it charming and easygoing. The fantastic soundtrack absolutely helped out too. But others dismissed Mystic Quest as a shallow detour in the franchise's history. What does all of this mean, though? Was Square successful in making a simpler RPG experience that was also engaging and fun to play? Or did they simply oversimplify things and further alienate the potential fans that they were hoping to create? Well, my friends, those were the questions I pondered as I made my way through this experience. The only way to really articulate how I personally feel about this is to jump into the game itself. I have a copy of Mystic Quest over here, and we're going to slot this game into our Super Nintendo and give it a whirl together. While we get things ready, let's go beyond the development history here and peel back some of the deeper layers and see exactly what it is that we're working with. So, what is this game? Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, or Mystic Quest Legend as it's known in PAL regions, or Final Fantasy USA Mystic Quest as it's known in Japan, is a role-playing game released on the Super Nintendo in October 1992 in North America, and then later in 1993 in Japan and Europe. While most RPGs would see you taking control of multiple characters or a large party, Mystic Quest had players taking control of just one central character, in this case a young man named Benjamin. Benjamin is kind of an average, everyday sort of guy that suddenly gets swept up into this huge adventure. The world's in trouble, its elemental crystals are being drained of power, and naturally, Benjamin is the one who's got to step up and save the day. Along the way, he'll team up with a rotating cast of allies, each bringing their own skills to the fight, and together they'll travel across forests, mountains, and through dungeons to restore balance to the world. Now, what that means for you as the player is a pretty straightforward RPG loop. You're exploring overworld maps, diving into dungeons, battling monsters and turn-based fights, and solving some light puzzles to keep things moving. Mystic Quest, as I've mentioned pretty handedly here in the show, was designed to be simple, so you're not just juggling tons of stats or getting buried under menus. Instead, you get a fast-paced, easy-to-follow adventure that gives you a taste of what Final Fantasy is all about. Like I've mentioned plenty of times up to this point, think of Mystic Quest as a beginner-friendly RPG with a killer soundtrack, some fun boss fights, and just enough charm to keep you hooked without overwhelming you. The cool thing about Mystic Quest on the SNES is that the game comes with a pretty beefy instruction manual that sets up the game's story, as well as going over many of the game's details. Near the end of the manual, there's actually a pretty decent surface-level walkthrough that'll help you progress through a fairly sizable chunk of the game. I have to assume this was yet another attempt by Square to make the game as accessible as possible. There's even a list of items that you can acquire in the game and the locations those items can be found in. I had no idea this existed until after I finished the game, so it didn't do me any good, but it's nice that it was there. As far as figuring out the game's story and how to play the game itself, don't worry. We don't need no instruction manual. I, Nomad, am here to guide you towards adventure and teach you along the way. That said, preparations are complete and it's time to slot this game into our SNES and dive right in. Are you ready, hero? Of course you are. Let's hit that power button and get to it. When we power the game up, the title screen appears and you'll get your first taste of this game's awesome music. The words Final Fantasy Mystic Quest in a golden font appear at the top of the screen, and we'll also see 5 crystals appear as well. Keeping with the Final Fantasy crystal theme, no doubt, we can see them hopping all over the screen. When they come to rest, the 2 on the left as well as the 2 on the right emit a sort of energy burst, while the 1 in the center continues to shine bright. The words "press any button" appears on screen after a moment, urging us forward. Well, you know what to do. Go ahead and pick your favorite button on the SNES controller and press it. The music cuts out here, and on the next screen we're asked to enter our name. Well, nothing against the Benjamins of the world, but I prefer my own name here. Let's see. N O M A D. Nomad. Hey, that's me! Go ahead and select End, and let's get to the game proper. We're taken to the game's overworld map. This is what we'll use to travel to and from different locations in the game. We can see our character's avatar standing in front of a mountain range of some kind, but don't get too attached to this screen yet, though. The moment it comes up, the screen will start to violently shake. Uh-oh, something is clearly happening. The game automatically selects the mountain location that we're at, and the screen goes black. On screen, we find ourselves at a location called the Hill of Destiny. We know this because the words Hill of Destiny are at the bottom of the screen. The music playing here is very panic-inducing. Something is clearly going wrong. There's some information at the bottom of our screen, but ignore it for now. We have to figure out exactly what the hell is going on around here. We see our main character standing in the middle of the screen, a young man with what looks to be brown hair, and decked out in a purple-ish, bluish set of armor. The hill that we're on seems fairly nondescript, but judging by the clouds on the left side of the screen, we appear to be pretty high up on this hill. The game automatically moves our character to a mysterious elderly man who seems to be waiting for us. All the while, the screen shakes and rumbles. Our character gets to the old man and speaks. A dialogue box appears on screen.
My village is gone. What on earth is going on?
Oh, you need to press the A button to move the dialogue along here. Perfect, thank you. The old man speaks now.
This place is going to sink any second. Let's climb up, quick!
The old man turns around and heads up a set of stairs. The game moves your character automatically up the stairs after him. At the top of the plateau, there's a gap from this plateau to another plateau on the right-hand side of the screen where the old man now sits. Crap, how are we gonna get across that?
Press the B button and jump across.
Jump across, huh? Interesting. Go ahead and press the B button like the old man said. Oh, look at that. Our character jumps the gap, and as soon as we land on the other side, the plateau we just jumped from starts to sink into the ground. Damn, what an opening so far. And more interesting is the idea that our character can jump. There will be times that we'll need to jump over other gaps or over obstacles to progress in the game, and I rather like the addition to the gameplay. Though I'll admit that there was a part in one of the game's later dungeons where I hadn't used jump in a very long time, so I forgot I could actually do it, and then I needed to do it in order to get past an obstacle that was blocking my way. That was kind of annoying, but that was 100% on me. Anyway, now that we're across the gap, the game moves our character to the top of the screen to look off the edge of the plateau. We can see a large stone tower in the distance poking through the cloud cover. The old man moves to us and speaks.
Look over there. That's the focus tower, once the heart of the world. An old prophecy says, the Vile Four will steal the power and divide the world behind 4 doors. At that time, the night will appear. The prophecy has now come true. 4 monsters have locked the doors of the focus tower and escaped with the keys. They're draining the light from the 4 crystals of the earth, and the world is in chaos. The people are in desperate need of help. Benjamin, only you can save the crystals and the world.
Our character turns to the old man. Me?
Yes, you, Benjamin. Only you can be the knight spoken of in the prophecy.
Our character takes a moment to process this. Man, just think about it. Us, the chosen hero. I mean, it has to be us, right? We're the only person besides the old man on this hill, so destiny and the laws of video games decree that we have to do this. Uh-oh, something materializes next to us. The old man is surprised, which we can tell because of the 2 exclamation marks that appear next to him. And then we get the surprised exclamation points next to us.
Look out! A monster!
With that, the screen goes black and we are thrust into our very first battle. We're taken to the battle screen where we can see our character at the bottom. His back is to us as he faces down the monster attacking us, a green behemoth with piercing red eyes. Alright, if destiny has chosen us, it is time we step up. Let's steel our resolve and take this thing down. At the bottom of the screen, we have 3 commands: battle, run, and control. Control won't have any use for us right now, so just ignore that. And you might as well ignore run too, since I would assume running from this battle is impossible. When we select battle, it'll open up several commands that we can pick from, so go ahead and do that now. Nice. From here, we can attack using our equipped weapon, cast a spell, use an item, or put ourselves on the defense. We don't have any spells to use at the moment, nor items to use, so let's go on the attack. Select attack, and by doing so, we'll see a yellow targeting reticle surround the behemoth. This is the part where we select our target for the attack, but seeing as how there's only 1, just confirm what you got going there with the A button. Text at the bottom of the screen appears and says that the behemoth attacks with horn. Oh, ouch, that did 6 damage to us. You can see at the very bottom of the screen that we have a health bar, which has gotten a little shorter after taking a horn to the face. No worries though, it's our turn to attack. On screen, it tells us that we're attacking with our steel sword. Not bad, 25 damage. There isn't too much to this particular battle, just the back and forth of attacks here, but you can kind of get an idea of how combat flows. When it's your turn, you take an action, and depending on yours and your enemy's speed stat, the higher speed stat will determine which character or enemy acts first. The goal of the battle is to reduce the health of the behemoth to 0, and once you do, it perishes. Awesome, great work. Hey there, future nomad from the editing room. While I pride myself in my abilities to lift sound effects from the video games that I feature on the show, I had a really hard time with Mystic Quest, and it really put my self-taught skills to the test. That said, I was not able to get my hands on a clean version of the sound that you hear when you defeat an enemy, so I'm using the sound you hear from the original Final Fantasy VII. I'm also going to be using another sound effect from a different game for the sound that plays when you open a treasure chest, and then the sound from Final Fantasy VII that happens when you enter combat. Just wanted to point those out for the few diehard Final Fantasy nerds out there that probably would be completely justified in calling me out. Appreciate your patience and understanding, but back to our adventure. After the behemoth is defeated, we'll be awarded with 84 experience points and 3 GP, or gold pieces. Nice. We're back on the Hill of Destiny with the old man. After the behemoth fades away, he speaks.
Seems I was right. At last I found a true knight.
Our character responds.
But you said you weren't sure I was the one.
Well, actually it was more of a guess.
Our character shrugs at this. This old guy doesn't seem like he's all there.
Just forget it. Tell me where I can find the crystals.
You know, I like our main character. He is not in the mood for any of this prophecy bullshit, and he wants to get right to business. I can absolutely respect that.
It's up to you to find them.
Oh, because of course it is. The plateau shakes again, reminding us that things here on the Hill of Destiny are still a bit precarious.
This place is becoming dangerous. Follow me to the level forest.
With that, the old man seemingly flies away, leaving us stranded on the plateau. Our character shrugs again in disbelief, but soon he regains his composure and realizes that it is in fact time to go.
Gotta get out of here. Who was that guy anyway?
After this, our character automatically walks down the hill and leaves the area. The game takes us to the overworld map and we walk to the left. As we do, the Hill of Destiny perishes under a pile of rubble. Whew, good thing we got out of there in time. The game moves our character to a location on the map called the Level Forest. Now, before we head in, let's take a moment to check out the world map. Well, overworld might be a better thing to call it, as this really isn't a map. The world of Mystic Quest is divided up on the overworld map, and places you'll visit are represented by little icons. There will be arrows that come up around your character when you're at a location, which will tell you what direction you can travel. You can only move in the direction of a blinking green or yellow arrow, though. The game is structured in a way where you can't travel to places until they're made available to you through advancing the story. I was a little annoyed by this at first, given how much I enjoy my freedom, but don't worry, you'll have too many places to travel to as the game goes on. Really, it can almost be a little overwhelming keeping track of everything, despite how small the game world actually is compared to other RPGs. There's not much we can do now except enter the level forest, so hit your A button and let's head in. We enter the forest, and the first thing I noticed was how brown this particular area was. At first, I thought it was just an odd graphical choice by the developers for some reason, but I later learned that the energy of the land was seemingly being drained now that the land's crystals had been taken by the Evil Four. Things will look much more lush when we retrieve the crystal though, which I actually think is one of the game's finer features. In front of us, we'll see the old man again waiting for us, but before we go and talk to him, take a moment to get your bearings. When I played the game for the very first time, I made it a point to see what all the buttons did in this moment, since we finally have some semblance of control of our character. The first thing you'll notice is your character will use whatever weapon that they have equipped if you press the A button. Go ahead and try that now. See there? Your character thrusts their sword forward. What is the purpose of that, you might be wondering? Well, you might think it's for taking on enemies, but you'd be incorrect. Using your weapons like this has other purposes beyond fighting. For example, see the trees over there on the right-hand side that are about as tall as you are? You can chop those trees down if you have an axe. As far as what you can do with your sword, it can be used to press switches and manipulate other environmental things for the purposes of puzzle solving. There's even a set of cat-like claws that you can use as a weapon that you'll find later that allows you to traverse different cliff faces and other hard-to-reach places. Mystic Quest, while an RPG at its core, does have some action-adventure elements to it. Defeating enemies is a huge part of things, but finding your way through an area by pushing blocks, knocking things out of your way, jumping on platforms, or pressing switches is part of the journey as well. All of that together actually does a decent job of breaking up the experience a little bit. There's also plenty of hidden treasure chests and items that you can find by exploring off the beaten path a little, so definitely keep this in mind. Speaking of exploration and terrain traversal, don't forget about jumping. As you move with the directional buttons, pressing the B button will have your character jump. Go on, give it a try real quick by moving in a direction and pressing the B button. Nice form you got there. Jumping will help you move around an environment by either jumping over gaps like we did in the Hill of Destiny, or allow us to jump over other obstacles. You can even jump over people if you need to move past them and they aren't getting the hell out of your way. Between using your weapons and jumping, you'll have some interesting ways that you can interact with the game world. Of all the things going on in this game, I think the way you interact with the environment is probably one of my favorites. It's nothing all that robust or anything, and you're not going to break the game or anything with these tools, but I like how the developers tried to give this game more of an action-adventure feel. It certainly helped keep my attention when there were no baddies around to fight, and I was looking for a way around. I'd also like to think this was another measure to make this game more approachable to us in the West, and think it was a decent move to include it all. Alright, enough of my jibba jabba, let's continue our journey. Things are going to start getting a little bit more exciting here in a bit. Go ahead and walk over to the old man, who I'm sure is very confused by all the random jumping and sword swinging we've been doing, and hit your A button to talk to him.
There you are. What do you think I should do first?
Save the crystal of the earth. See ya!
With that, the old man flies away once again, leaving us behind. Our character, once again, looks at us and shrugs. This old man is pretty flaky, but at least we have our mission. Not sure how we're going to accomplish that mission, but I guess we'll figure that out in time. When we get control back, go ahead and head north. Almost immediately we'll see another old man in blue robes. Go over to him and see what he has going on.
That boulder is blocking my way to town. Would you shove it aside?
Alright, seems easy enough. Behind him, we can see a boulder blocking the path forward. Since the old man doesn't really have any room to step out of our way, we're going to have to jump over him to get to the boulder. There you go, easy enough. Now, just push the directional button up to push the boulder out of the way to create a new path. Excellent. The old man then waddles over to us.
Thank you. If you want to go through this forest, find Callie in Foresta and show her this.
The old man hands us an item and we get a prompt that says, "We received the tree wither item." Looks like it's just a part of the withered forest around us. Maybe whoever this Callie is doesn't understand the devastation the land has undergone. Either way, the old man says nothing more and lets us get back to it. Now, before we move on, you'll probably have noticed a brown chest to your left. If you push the boulder to the left or even jump over it, you can create a pathway so you can reach the chest. Go ahead using whatever means you'd like and get to the chest and open it up. Ooh, what do we have here? Looks like we found 3 cure potions. An RPG staple, cure potions will recover some of our lost HP or hit points. We can use them in battle or out in the overworld. Chests like this are scattered all over the game world, so keep your eye out for more of these in your travels. Another thing you're bound to notice at this point are all the other creatures hanging out in the forest. To your left a little ways is a goblin-looking creature just hanging out, and to the north is a green slime-looking thing. These are actual enemies that you can fight if you touch them. Which brings me to, I think this is actually my favorite feature of the game, and that's the fact that there are no random encounters that just decide to happen whenever they want as you traverse the world. All the enemies are visible, meaning you can walk around them if you don't want to fight them, and if you do want to fight them, winning the battle keeps them off the battlefield so long as you don't leave the area. While I don't think I dislike random encounters as much as some people do, I absolutely prefer seeing the enemies on the battlefield whenever that makes sense. Not only does it allow me agency to decide if I want to get into a battle or not, I actually feel more inclined to engage in a fight just for the satisfaction of clearing them off the map. Which is a good thing, because we're going to be fighting a lot in this game. Now, not every enemy can be bypassed. Sometimes enemies will be put in your way and you'll have no choice but to engage in battle, but at least you can plan for it and even get an idea of what sort of enemies you're going to fight based on the enemy that you see on screen there. It's all very well done, and again, I like this feature a lot. At least for the moment though, we can't head in that direction with all these trees in our way. Let's head back to the right. When we do, we'll exit the forest and be put back on the world map. Back on the map, we can see that we can now move towards the right since the arrow is now blinking red and yellow. Press the directional button in that direction and let's get a move on. When we do, we'll eventually land on an icon that's clearly representing a town. This is Foresta, the village where Kaylee lives. Since she's our only lead, we should head into the town and find her. RPG law dictates that if we run into any sort of obstruction when it comes to advancing the plot, a new character we haven't met yet has a very high chance of either having the thing that we need to move forward or removing said obstruction for us. That said, let's head into the village. Aside from finding Kaylee, there's something else we should grab that'll give us an edge in battle. We enter the village of Foresta, and it's just as brown as the level forest. Oh, before I forget, another RPG staple I feel like are the different regions that you'll traverse through. Some of them are defined by the environments that they're in, different biomes if you will. Mystic Quest embraces this idea with the names of its 4 major areas. There's the Earth region with the main town Foresta, where we're at right now, the Water region with the main town Aquaria, the Wind region with town Windia, and the Fire region with the town Fireburg. I mean, you can't get any more on the nose than that, and I absolutely love it. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked, sorry about that. Foresta is a fairly large-ish area to explore, so I encourage you to look around. I'll let you discover where it is on your own, but there is a treasure chest in this village that will contain your very first magic spell, the Cure spell. Magic in Mystic Quest can make your journey much easier, and it's pretty simple to learn and use. In order to learn a spell, you just need to find a book that contains that spell. And, just like in real life, once you read the book, you'll immediately know and understand everything in it and never forget a word that you read. Magic books are hidden mainly in treasure chests in this game, but you can also find them as rewards for doing some of the game's side content. There's 3 classes of magic that you can learn: white magic, black magic, and wizard magic, and there's 4 spells per class, making it possible for you to learn a total of 12 unique spells as we go. There's no magic meter or anything you have to manage in order to use your spells, which is nice. You get a specific number of times that you can cast a specific class of spells, and that number will decrease with every usage, but also replenish by using items or resting at an inn. Really, it's as simple as that. In some of the game's longer areas or dungeons, you'll have to be mindful that you don't run through all of your magic, so it's a bit of a balancing act. But thanks to some of the items that you can find along the way, there really wasn't very many times where I personally ran out of magic and found myself stuck or at a huge disadvantage because of it. Alright, assuming you took my advice and roamed the town a little and found the cure spell, let's get back on track. From the entrance of the village, if we head to the first house on the left, we'll find that we're in Kaylee's house. We know this because of the very helpful caption that pops up when we move inside. There are two women at the table further in, and we can see a pretty beefy axe on the wall behind them. That looks incredibly useful. Ignore it for now, though, and let's go ahead and strike up a conversation with the gal on the left. When we interact with her, she turns to us.
I'm Callie. There's a tree blocking the north exit of the level forest. I can chop down the tree, but monsters have overtaken the forest and I can't get to it. I can help you with that. Come on, let's go!
A set of exclamation points appears over the other woman's head. She clearly does not like this plan.
Don't you dare take Callie anywhere dangerous!
Callie turns around.
Listen, Mom.
Before she can continue, she turns back towards us.
Hey, that tree wither looks awful! How much the trees must be suffering. Okay, you win.
Seeing the state of the forest is all Callie needs to see to understand what's at stake here. She moves to the wall and grabs the axe. Her mother rushes over.
Don't worry, Mom.
With that, Kaylee moves towards us and we get a prompt on screen that says Kaylee joined. Sweet. At the bottom of the screen, we can see that Kaylee's health and level are now on the lower right-hand side of the screen, signifying that she's traveling with us. While we have a fellow traveler with us that will participate in battle alongside us, it's worth mentioning that we aren't going to be building up a huge party that we have to manage throughout the game here. In this way, Mystic Quest continues to keep things simple. Throughout our journey, people will join us for a little while, and then when the plot needs it to happen, they'll leave us. We'll never have more than one ally with us at a time, but when they are with us, we'll want to leverage them as much as possible. Generally, when you have an ally join you, they're going to be stronger than you, but there's a catch. Allies don't level up like you do, so they aren't going to get any stronger than they already are, at least in that moment. They'll usually bring a specific item and set of spells to the table, so be sure to get familiar with who it is that they are and how they can be best used. It's always nice having an ally with you, as two characters certainly make battle a little bit easier than just having the one. I will say, from a story perspective, while you're going to be meeting a lot of characters, none of them are particularly memorable. Kaylee, if I'm even saying your name right, I'm sure I've pronounced it like 3 different ways throughout this show, but I digress. Callie has a deep connection to the forest, as we can see, and wields an axe. Cool. We'll also come across Tristram, who's a ninja that can throw ninja stars, who acts like a mercenary type of character. Phoebe, who's just an adventurer trying to save her town, and Reuben, the dutiful adventurer who's also out to save his town. All of these people are cool, but I formed absolutely no attachment to any of them, and none of them really had any sort of worthwhile character development or arc. And while it's easy to blast the game for this, because it is an RPG, and RPGs are usually known for their robust stories and all, I don't think I really care, all things considered. Mainly because I went into this game knowing it was made to be a simple experience, one that a child could play and enjoy, so I was not expecting Oscar levels of performance here. One thing though that I found to be exceptionally funny is that in the instruction manual, it says, and I quote,
Some people who join you during the game leave rather abruptly. You can make your quest more enjoyable by writing down the names of characters, their relationships to other characters, their hometowns, and so forth.
Pfft, really? Come on, man. If I have to do manual legwork to get remotely attached to these characters, that makes me like them even less. But also, I understand it's the simplicity on offer here. Still, some of these characters will rejoin you other times in your quest, and it's neat to see them get stronger and have other weapons that they'll bring to the table. So having them there did add a bit to combat as a whole, so there is that. Okay, with Kaylee and her big axe in our party, let's head back to the level forest so we can progress forward. When we enter the level forest, Callie runs ahead and stands by a tree blocking our way. When we talk to her, she says,
"Let me cut this down with my axe."
Turning around, she takes a big ol' swing and in one swift motion knocks the tree down and out of our way. Damn, she is one strong lady. Kaylee turns back to us.
"We've got to reach the north exit."
At that, she rejoins us and we regain control. With the tree out of the way, we're free to explore the forest. Enemies are littering the path, and while most can be avoided, that goblin we saw earlier is blocking our way. We're going to have to do battle with it in order to move on, so are you ready to get this done, my friend? Good, that's the spirit. Walk into the goblin to initiate combat. Alright, it is time to fight. But before we do, listen to this awesome battle music. God damn, this is awesome, and it really gets the blood going, doesn't it? Okay, sorry, enough of that, time to get to work. When the battle begins, we'll see 3 enemies on screen. We've got 2 goblins that the enemy has labeled as brownies because they're brown, I guess. And there's a green slime creature called Slime. At the beginning of each turn, you'll input commands for your character, then your ally if you have one in your party with you. Well, actually, let me take that last part back. Initially, allies will act on their own without the need to input commands for them, and you can tell that's how they're set up if you see the word auto above the weapon that they have equipped if you look at the lower right hand side of your screen. Using the control command, you can set it to manual if you want more control over what they do. Personally, I always kept my allies set to manual control. While they generally act with decent intelligence, sometimes they would use some items or take other actions that went against my battle strategy. To each their own though, I'm sure it's kinda nice not having to worry about a second ally, but I prefer to set Kaylee to manual, so let's do that. Okay, great, thank you, I feel a little bit better now. Now, let's start things off by having our character attack with a sword. Target the goblin on the left. Perfect. We can have Kaylee target another enemy, but I vote we gang up on the same enemy, just in case the first hit doesn't do the job. Awesome. Once everyone has their commands locked in, battle commences. Characters and enemies will go in the order of their speed stat, and it looks like Callie is the fastest here as she acts first. She swings her axe and whacks an enemy on the head with it. That's right, I don't have a sound effect that goes along with this, so use your imagination. Or you know what, I'll make up my own, here we go. Kaylee swings her axe and strikes the goblin. Thwack! Ha, nice, 79 damage. It's enough to kill the goblin outright and he vanishes from the field. Our character acts next, and with his target off the board, he strikes the goblin in the middle. Decent hit, 49 damage. The goblin still stands, but check out what happens to his character model. The hat that he was wearing is gone, and his forehead has a white bandage on it, signifying that he's at low health. Now that is pretty neat. Sure, it's not all that novel or anything nowadays, I guess, but I always thought it was a really cool way to show that the damage you're doing to an enemy is actually having an impact on them, and it gives the battle some actual visual progression. Some boss monsters that you're gonna fight later down the road will have multiple instances of visual damage too. So, I gotta say, good on you, Mystic Quest, this was a nice touch. After our characters' turns are taken, the enemies will act and strike you accordingly. Be sure to keep an eye out on your overall health at the bottom of the screen. You have a pretty visual health bar that highlights your remaining HP, but honestly, I do not care for this visual. Personally, I'd rather see the actual number of HP I have left, and lucky for us, we can turn that view on and the health bar off in the options menu, so definitely do that if you're like me and don't really like the health bars. Anyway, once you defeat these goons, the battle is over and we are the victors. We'll walk away with 198 experience points and 9 GP. Sweet. After that, we return to the forest. The goblin that was in our way vanishes and we're free to move deeper into the forest. There's more slime monsters around us, so be mindful as you move around here. I mentioned this before, but not every enemy needs to be fought. However, I do strongly encourage you to get into battle as often as your health and resources allow. It kinda goes without saying, but the best way to get your character stronger is to do battle, gain experience points, and level up. There's also some pathways that you won't be able to access with an enemy blocking it, so make sure to clean house. As long as you're in an area like the level forest, enemies stay gone unless you go to the world map and come back. Oh, and I also noticed that some treasure chests will be refilled with items if you leave and come back, so keep that one in mind as well. Eventually, as we explore the forest, battling enemies and finding items, you'll come across a tree that stands out against the rest. It sort of has this eerie, ethereal glow to it. When Kaylee goes to cut it down, we're surprised to find that a monster appears.
Surprise!
Callie falls down and says that she's been poisoned like the creature poisoned the trees. There's no time to think about all that though, because all at once we're taken into battle. Here it comes, my friends, our very first boss battle. When the battle begins, the Minotaur stands before us. Even though Kaylee was poisoned, she's well enough to fight and stands at our side. Now, before we get to the battle, can we also take a moment and appreciate this banger boss theme right here? Oh my god, just another amazing tune. If you're not feeling pumped up in this moment, I don't know what'll do it for you, my friend. The battle itself here isn't really all that complicated, but the Minotaur will absolutely put the hurt on you with his axe. It also has an attack that will reduce the defense of one of our characters, which will make his attacks even more powerful. Hopefully you found a few more cure potions while you were out about exploring the forest, because you will absolutely need a few. Better yet, if you took the time to find the cure spell in Foresta like I mentioned, you can have your main character cast cure as needed, and it is much more potent than a potion. As long as you work to keep your character's health relatively high, you should have no real issues with this battle. Oh, and that reminds me of another neat feature that Mystic Quest has. If you do fail this battle and both characters fall, you'll obviously lose the battle and it'll be game over, but you'll actually be able to try the battle again without having to reload a past save. It's really handy, let me tell you. So while losing a fight can certainly be frustrating, you will not run the risk of losing progress unless you choose to quit. It is worth noting that whatever HP you had when you started the battle is what HP you're going to start at again when you retry the battle, so keep that in mind if you do need to give it another go. When the Minotaur finally has enough punishment, it goes down. Nice work, warrior. Your reward for this battle is 102 experience points, which seems really low given how intense that battle was, but you do get 30 GP, which is not too bad, I guess. Back in the forest, Kaylee collapses due to the poison. Her mother, who apparently decided to follow after us, rushes up.
Callie, what happened? I'll be okay. As soon as I take elixir. That's in the sand temple. Don't worry, I'll get it.
Kaylee reaches out and hands something to us.
Then take this axe with you.
A prompt on screen tells us that we now have the axe. Then, in his smoothest Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, I would assume, our character says, "I'll be back." Kaylee's mom scoops her up and takes her back to Foresta, leaving us to head north to the Sand Temple in order to find the elixir that'll cure our friend. Now, while all of that certainly sucks, we did get a sweet axe out of the deal, so that is pretty neat. With the axe, we can now knock down trees like Kaylee was doing earlier, giving us the ability to explore the forest even further if we want. The axe is also our equipped weapon now, meaning we can use it in combat too. Which brings me to another feature this game has. As you acquire weapons, you can cycle through them by pressing the shoulder buttons on your controller. You'll find additional swords, axes, and even a claw hand, as well as bombs that you can equip and use in battle too. The best part, you can cycle through them in real time in and out of combat. Each item has a different attack power, but some weapon types are even stronger against certain enemies. As another way to keep things simple, you don't have to go through menu hopping in order to unequip and re-equip that perfect weapon, you can just cycle through them as you please. It makes combat even more engaging too for what it's worth. If you're using a sword and want to try a different weapon to see if maybe an enemy's weak to that particular weapon, you can make those changes on the fly. It's really convenient. I will say that armor you find to boost your defense doesn't quite behave like this. Even though the instruction manual touches on armor a bit, I still don't think I fully understand how armor works. I'm pretty sure the game just automatically has you equipped with the best type of armor that you find. You can't make any manual changes yourself. While it is kinda confusing and I kinda don't like the idea that I can't just equip what I want, it is kinda nice that you don't really have to worry about it. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you up ahead, so when you're ready to move on, head north so we can get back to the world map. Once we're back on the map, we can tell that we can continue heading north now. The Sand Temple is to our north, but before we get there, there's a location that we can visit along the way. The icon that we see looks to be a green stone looking sort of thing with two swords on it, and this marks the location of what the game calls a battlefield. Battlefields aren't really places you can go into and explore in the traditional sense. They're more or less battle gauntlets that you can partake in. Each battlefield has 10 rounds, or 10 battles baked into them. They usually have enemies in them from the surrounding areas. These are great in order to get more experience, but if you clear all 10 battles on a battlefield, you'll get some sort of reward. Usually you'll get GP or additional experience, but sometimes you'll get an item. I do know of at least one magic spell that you can get from a battlefield, so it's usually worth doing them. I say usually like that because there are some battlefield rewards that I feel are just insulting. I remember a few where I got an experience point reward where the experience point reward was less than just one of the battles that I had fought to get to that point. Like, seriously, what the hell was the point? Still, battling is the best way to get you stronger in this game, so you may as well grind it out. And it probably goes without saying, but if you happen to have an ally in your party, make it a point to take on as many battlefields as you can. 2 characters makes battles a bit easier than just having your main character fight solo. I have to say, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest does a pretty good job of setting things up and doing it all pretty quickly. Depending on how much exploring you do, everything we just talked about and experienced today happens within the first 15 to 30 minutes of gameplay. During this time, we get a feel for the combat, how exploration works, and the game's story is set up perfectly. There really isn't much else when it comes to the overall experience, though. When I completed the game, I had about 15 hours put into the experience, and that was me taking my time, battling every enemy that I saw, and finding what I assume is most of the items and treasures through exploration. One thing I'm actually proud of is the fact that I didn't need to use a guide at all. The game does a pretty good job of keeping you moving forward. There were a few times that you need to backtrack to previous locations, which can be a bit of a chore if you don't remember how to get there, or you miss that one piece of dialogue telling you exactly where you need to go, but it wasn't all bad. I had a genuinely good time with this game overall, but I'll be completely honest with you. After about 9 or so hours in, I was bored out of my mind. Like I mentioned before, I do not mind a grindy game when you're doing battle after battle to get experience and grow stronger, but other than making sure you were stronger for the next area, I didn't really have much incentive to keep pushing. You don't learn any new skills through battle, and other than accumulating gold, which I feel like I rarely used, by the way, there aren't any cool prizes for battling everything that you come across. This is where I realized that I think this game is almost a little too simplistic for my tastes. Even though the rewards were negligible, I still enjoyed the grind for what it was worth, and leveling up in any game never gets old to me. I can confidently say that, unless there's a remaster or remake of this game for some reason, I'll never play this game again, but I am genuinely glad that I did play it in the first place. Now, does the oversimplification of the game make it a bad video game? I ask this question because I've seen some people really tear into Mystic Quest for being so light on substance and way too easy. Personally, no, I don't think this was a bad game, not by a long shot. I just think you need to look at it for what it is, and what it was the developers intended by making this game what it is. If you go into Mystic Quest expecting a big, sprawling Final Fantasy epic, you're probably going to walk away disappointed. It's just not built that way. But if you come at it knowing that this is a much simpler take on the series, you might actually have a good time with it. It's quick to pick up, it doesn't drown you in complicated systems, and sometimes that lighter approach can be kind of refreshing. Sure, some players don't care for it because it feels too bare bones compared to the rest of the series, and that's fair. But if you're a fan of Final Fantasy and just want a bite-sized adventure with semi-familiar vibes, or you enjoy games that keep things simple and to the point, Mystic Quest might surprise you. It's not the deepest RPG out there, but there's a certain charm in its straightforwardness, and it can be a fun little detour if you're in the right mindset. When doing my light research into the development history, the idea that this game was made with children in mind sort of stuck with me. After I finished the game, I honestly wondered if Mystic Quest would be good for the kiddos starting out with RPGs. Overall, I think it would be a good gateway into the genre whether you are a child or not. It works as a gentle introduction. It teaches the basics of exploring towns, clearing out dungeons, and fighting monsters in turn-based combat without overwhelming new players. While I don't think I like the term baby's first RPG, this is a great game for anyone RPG curious, though I think those that really take a liking to the genre might abandon this game before the credits roll in favor of something more robust. Now, when it comes to whether or not Mystic Quest actually succeeded at its goal in bringing more RPGs to America, the short answer is not really. The game did sell modestly, but it didn't kick off the RPG boom that Square was hoping for. Like I mentioned at the very top, that wave didn't really hit until Final Fantasy VII a few years later, which grabbed mainstream attention in a very big way. A lot of gamers today, I feel, see Mystic Quest as a well-meaning experiment that kinda missed the mark. It was too simplified for established RPG fans, and for newcomers it didn't quite have enough punch to turn them into lifelong fans of the genre, or at least I never found anyone who specifically cited Mystic Quest as the reason they fell in love with RPGs. Still, the game did serve as a first RPG for some players, and in that sense, it could have opened the door for at least a few people out there. So while the data suggests it wasn't the game that popularized RPGs in the West, there's no denying that Final Fantasy Mystic Quest does hold a small but very important place in that history. And that will bring us to the end of another adventure, my friends. This has been episode 73 of the Retro Wildlands Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. While I think Mystic Quest ended up being a little too simplistic for my gaming taste given the game genre, I still really enjoyed my time with this one and I'm glad to have played it. If nothing else, it's further fueled the RPG fire for me, and with the remaster of Final Fantasy Tactics either about to drop or just recently dropped, depending on when you're hearing these words, I'm more eager to plunge myself into that game having gone through Mystic Quest. There's just something about the grind that'll always appeal to me. If you've never played Mystic Quest and are on the fence about it, I do think skipping it wouldn't be that big a deal. There's nothing here that you absolutely have to experience, but there is something cool about saying that you did complete it. And if you can't really find a reason to dive in, at least seek out the game's soundtrack. I always felt energized when listening to this game's tunes, and that's not something I can say about every RPG that I've played. If you liked the show today and you want to show it and myself some support, please consider subscribing to the Retro Wildlands on your preferred podcasting platform. This podcast continues to be a passion project for me, so episodes and content are dropped whenever I'm able to fit them in between the other priorities of my life. Subscribing to the show on your favorite pod platform will be the best way to get your hands on new episodes the moment they drop. You can also follow us on our social media pages or check out theretrowildlands.com for the latest on the show, check out some mini game reviews or blogs that I have up, or even check out some of the videos that I've made or even links to other podcasts that I've been on. The Retro Wildlands is also part of the SuperPod Network, home of some other awesome video game podcasts and other gaming content, and you can follow us over there at superpodnetwork.com. Other than this show, you can check out some other awesome shows such as Bar Silence, a video game music podcast, Call of Duty Thrack Ops, the Super Blog Codec with Danny, and more. There's blog posts, videos, and tons of other content, so be sure to check out all of that by heading over to superpodnetwork.com. Now, if you really like the show today and you have a bit of time to spare, I would love it if you could give us a good review or even share this show on social media with your friends. You can leave a star rating for the show over on Spotify, but you can leave that and a written review over on iTunes, Podchaser, Podbean, and Podcast Addict, just to name a few places. Good reviews and shares will help the show appear in more search feeds, I would assume, but more than that, it'll let me know that you like what it is that I'm trying to do here and that I'm delivering something that you actually enjoy. But, like I say every episode, you are under no obligation to do any of this. Just the fact that you're listening to my show right now is much more than I could have ever asked for, so, above all else, thank you, truly, for being here. So, what's coming up next? Like I said in the intro of the show, I wanted to do something spooky for the Halloween season. I had several games I was thinking about covering, but I agonized over which ones to make an episode out of. But I also thought about highlighting multiple games this year since I couldn't decide. And then, like a ton of bricks, it hit me. It has been a while since I've done a top 10 episode, and usually those don't take me all that long to put together, and they've been fairly well received. So, in an effort to give you something to listen to that shouldn't take too long to make, and as a way for me to satisfy myself selfishly, of course, we're going to dive deep into some of my favorite spooky video games. Next time on the Retro Wildlands, we're going to count down my top 10 favorite scary video games. I'm really looking forward to this one, and while I do know that I run the risk of mentioning games that I've potentially covered on the show already, or I run the risk of mentioning a game that I've already talked about in passing, I'm hoping the discussion in and of itself will still be fun, and I'll make sure to include some of the best spooky audio from those games where possible. My goal is to have you listen to the show with your lights off and your headphones on, so we'll see how fun we can make things. That said, I hope you do come back and hang out with us by the campfire next time as I talk about some of the games that are near and dear to my heart. Specifically the ones that fill me with adrenaline, dread, fear, and are just so much fun to play. Until then, my friends, my name is Nomad, and you can find me roaming the Retro Wildlands.